The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Arizona territory as bounty hunter Jake Morrison rode toward his remote cabin nestled in the Superstition Mountains. After 3 weeks tracking outlaws through the unforgiving desert, all he wanted was whiskey, rest, and solitude. But as his horse approached the weathered structure, something felt wrong. Smoke curled from the chimney he hadn't lit, and his keen eyes caught movement behind the dusty windows. Jake's hand instinctively moved to his Colt revolver as he dismounted, his spurs jangling against the rocky ground. The cabin door creaked open before he could reach for the handle, and there she stood, a young Apache woman, no more than 19, with piercing dark eyes and traditional buckskin dress adorned with intricate beadwork. Her long black hair was braided with turquoise ornaments, and despite her youthful appearance, there was an ancient wisdom in her gaze that made Jake's breath catch in his throat. "You're going to be my husband," she announced in perfect English, her voice carrying the musical cadence of her native tongue mixed with surprising confidence. Jake stumbled backward, his weathered face showing confusion and alarm. He'd faced down notorious gunfighters and survived Apache raids, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Ma'am, I think you've got the wrong man," Jake managed to stammer, removing his dusty hat to reveal sandy brown hair streaked with premature gray. The woman stepped closer, and he noticed intricate tattoos covering her hands, patterns he'd seen before but couldn't quite place. Something about her presence seemed both familiar and utterly foreign. The woman's name was Ayanna, meaning eternal blossom in her tribal language. Though Jake didn't know this yet, she moved with the fluid grace of someone raised in the wilderness. Yet her English was flawless, suggesting education beyond what most frontier women possessed. As she studied his face, her expression shifted from certainty to puzzlement, as if she were seeing something that didn't align with her expectations. "The spirits showed me your face in the sacred fire," Ayanna continued, circling Jake like a predator evaluating prey. "They told me to wait here, in this place where earth meets sky. They said my destiny would arrive on a tired horse, wearing the badge of law but carrying the burden of death." Jake's hand unconsciously touched the martial star pinned to his vest, hidden beneath his worn leather jacket. "How did you know about?" Jake began, but Ayanna raised her hand, silencing him with a gesture that seemed to carry supernatural authority. The wind picked up, whistling through the canyon walls with an almost musical quality that made the hair on Jake's neck stand up. In the distance, a coyote howled, and Ayanna's eyes grew distant, as if she were listening to voices only she could hear. "My grandmother was a medicine woman of great power," she explained, moving toward the cabin's interior while gesturing for Jake to follow. "Before she passed to the spirit world, she told me of a vision. A white man would come, marked by violence but seeking peace. He would be the key to saving our people from a great darkness approaching from the east." Jake hesitated at the threshold, every instinct screaming danger. But curiosity and something deeper, something he couldn't name, pulled him forward. The cabin's interior had been transformed. Native blankets covered his rough furniture, sage burned in clay bowls, and intricate sand paintings decorated the floor. The familiar space felt alien yet somehow more welcoming than it ever had before. "Your grandmother's vision," Jake said carefully, settling into his own chair that now seemed foreign to him. "Did it say anything about choice? Because where I come from, folks generally get to decide who they marry." Ayanna smiled for the first time, and Jake felt his resistance wavering. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was more than that. There was something about her presence that made the loneliness he'd carried for years seem suddenly unbearable. "Choice is an illusion the white man created to feel powerful," Ayanna replied, preparing tea from herbs Jake didn't recognize. "The spirits weave all paths before we walk them. But your path, Jake Morrison of Tombstone, has been particularly troubled." Jake's blood ran cold. He'd never told anyone his name or his connection to Tombstone. That chapter of his life was buried deeper than any grave he'd ever dug. As Ayanna handed him the steaming cup, her fingers brushed his, and Jake felt an electric shock that seemed to travel through his entire body. Images flashed through his mind, scenes he'd tried to forget. The bank robbery in Tombstone that had gone wrong. The innocent woman who died in the crossfire. The guilt that had driven him from town to town, always running, never finding peace. "You see it too," Ayanna whispered, her eyes reflecting knowledge that seemed impossible for someone so young to possess. "The darkness you carry isn't yours alone. It belongs to the man who hired you, the man who wanted that bank robbed, who sacrificed innocent lives for his own gain. Thomas Blackwood still lives, still profits from death, and now he comes for my people." The name hit Jake like a physical blow. Thomas Blackwood, the wealthy mine owner who'd secretly funded the robbery to eliminate witnesses to his illegal mining operations on Apache land. Jake had suspected but never had proof. The woman who died, Sarah Martinez, had been Blackwood's accountant, carrying evidence of his crimes. Her death had haunted Jake for 5 years, driving him to become a bounty hunter, seeking some form of redemption through capturing other criminals. "How do you know about Blackwood?" Jake demanded, setting down the teacup with shaking hands. "That information died with Sarah Martinez." Ayanna's expression grew solemn, and she moved to a leather pouch hanging from the cabin wall. From it, she withdrew a bundle of papers, yellowed with age but carefully preserved. "Sarah Martinez was my teacher at the mission school," Ayanna explained, unfolding documents that Jake recognized as banking records and land deeds. "She suspected what Blackwood was planning and gave these to me for safekeeping the day before she died. She said if anything happened to her, I should find the bounty hunter with kind eyes and a heavy heart. She described you perfectly, Jake Morrison." Jake stared at the papers, his hands trembling as he recognized Sarah's careful handwriting. Bank transfers, mining permits, correspondence with corrupt territorial officials, all the evidence needed to bring Blackwood to justice. But why had Sarah chosen Ayanna? And why had it taken 5 years for this moment to arrive? Sarah saw the future in her dreams. Ayanna continued, her voice taking on the rhythm of ancient storytelling. "White woman's medicine," she called it, different from ours but equally powerful. "She knew Blackwood would eventually come for my people's land, knew you would be the one to stop him, and knew our destinies were bound together by more than chance." As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of approaching horses echoed through the canyon. Jake peered through the window and counted at least a dozen riders, their faces obscured by bandanas, rifles gleaming in the fading sunlight. At their head rode a man in an expensive suit, completely out of place in the wilderness but unmistakably commanding the group. "Blackwood," Jake breathed, his hand moving instinctively to his gun. But Ayanna placed her hand over his, her touch somehow calming his racing heart. "He's found us," Jake continued, but Ayanna shook her head with mysterious confidence. "He hasn't found us," she corrected. "We've drawn him here. This is where Sarah's vision ends and our choice begins." She moved to another pouch and withdrew war paint, traditional Apache face decorations that seemed to transform her before Jake's eyes from a young woman into a warrior goddess. "The sacred fire showed me 2 paths," Ayanna explained as she painted Jake's face with symbols he didn't understand but somehow felt connected to. "In one, Blackwood destroys my people and you die trying to stop him alone. In the other, we stand together, united not just in purpose but in spirit, and the darkness is defeated." Jake felt the paint drying on his skin, warm and tight, like a second skin that connected him to something larger than himself. Through the window, he could see Blackwood's men surrounding the cabin, their movements precise and military. These weren't ordinary hired guns, they were professionals, possibly former cavalry, trained in Apache fighting tactics. "There's something else," Ayanna said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Something the vision showed me that I haven't told you. Blackwood isn't just after the land for mining. He's searching for something specific, something my people have guarded for generations. The real reason he wanted Sarah dead wasn't just the evidence she carried. It was because she'd learned the location of the sacred chamber." Jake's mind raced. Every story he'd heard about Apache treasure was dismissed as legend, but Ayanna's seriousness suggested otherwise. "What's in this chamber?" he asked, checking his weapons as Boots approached the cabin door. "The future," Ayanna replied cryptically. "Weapons, gold, knowledge left by the ancient ones. Enough power to control the entire territory, maybe more." Blackwood believes it belongs to him because he holds the deeds to the land. But the land was never his to claim. A voice boomed from outside, refined and educated, carrying the authority of wealth and position. Miss Ayanna, I know you're in there. I also know you have something that belongs to me. Come out peacefully, and no one needs to get hurt. Jake and Ayanna exchanged glances, both recognizing the lie in Blackwood's words. Men like him didn't leave witnesses, especially witnesses who could expose years of corruption and murder. Through the window, Jake counted the odds: 13 armed men against 2, with minimal cover and limited ammunition. The chamber, Jake whispered urgently. Is there another way out of here? Ayanna nodded, moving to what appeared to be a solid wall. Her hands found hidden pressure points, and a section of the rock face swung inward, revealing a narrow tunnel that seemed to descend into the earth itself. The ancestors built many paths through these mountains, she explained. This one leads to the heart of the sacred place. But Jake, if we enter together, there's no going back. The chamber changes those who enter it. We would be bound together, spiritually and physically, for the rest of our lives. Jake looked at the tunnel, then back at the woman who'd appeared in his cabin claiming to be his destined wife. Everything rational in his mind screamed that this was madness, but something deeper, something that had awakened the moment he'd seen her, whispered that this was exactly where he was meant to be. You're asking me to marry you to save your people and stop Blackwood, Jake said. Not a question but a statement of understanding. Ayanna's smile was radiant, transforming her face from beautiful to transcendent. I'm asking you to choose your destiny instead of running from it, she replied. Sarah's vision ended with this moment. Whatever happens next, we write together. Outside, Blackwood's patience was wearing thin. I'm going to count to 10, then my men start shooting. 1, 2. Jake made his decision, not with his mind but with his heart. He took Ayanna's hand, feeling that electric connection again, stronger this time. Let's go save the world, he said, and they plunged into the tunnel just as the first bullets shattered the cabin windows. The passage was narrow, forcing them to move single file, but Ayanna navigated the darkness with supernatural confidence. Behind them, the sounds of Blackwood's men searching the cabin grew distant, then disappeared entirely. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took Jake's breath away. Ancient petroglyphs covered the walls, telling stories of civilizations that predated any European presence in the Americas. But it wasn't the artwork that stunned him, it was the arsenal. Weapons from every era and culture lined stone shelves, from Apache war clubs to Spanish conquistador swords to firearms that looked more advanced than anything Jake had ever seen. The guardians of this place were traders, collectors, visionaries. Ayanna explained, her voice echoing in the sacred space. They gathered knowledge and tools from all peoples, preparing for a time when their descendants would need them to protect the land itself. Jake picked up one of the advanced firearms, marveling at its craftsmanship and design. It felt familiar in his hands, as if he'd been born to wield it. Ammunition was plentiful, and there were other tools, tactical equipment that wouldn't be invented for decades. Maps showing secret passages throughout the mountain range, and documents detailing Blackwood's operations going back years. Sarah wasn't just hiding evidence, Jake realized. She was gathering intelligence, planning a campaign against Blackwood that she knew she wouldn't live to see. Ayanna nodded, moving to an ornate chest at the chamber's center. And she prepared this for us? Ayanna said, opening the chest to reveal 2 items that made Jake's heart race. The first was a wedding dress, traditional Apache style but modified with white lace and silver that seemed to glow in the chamber's mysterious light. The second was a marshal's badge, not territorial but federal, with authority that superseded any local corruption. She knew, Jake whispered, understanding finally dawning. Sarah saw all of this. She arranged for me to become a bounty hunter, knowing it would lead me here. She guided your education, taught you English, prepared you for this moment. We're not just fulfilling a prophecy, we're completing her plan. Ayanna began changing into the wedding dress, unashamed of Jake's presence in a way that spoke to the spiritual nature of their connection. In my culture, marriage isn't just a union between 2 people. It's a binding of destinies, a commitment to fight together for something greater than individual happiness. Jake pinned the federal marshal's badge to his vest, feeling its weight like a mantle of responsibility. With this authority, he could arrest Blackwood and his men, bring them to justice, protect Ayana's people, and finally find the redemption that had eluded him for 5 years. So when we leave this chamber, Jake said, selecting weapons and ammunition for their return journey, we're husband and wife, and I'm a federal marshal with the evidence to destroy Blackwood's empire. Ayana nodded, now transformed in her wedding dress from a mysterious woman into something radiant and powerful. But first, she said, moving to an altar Jake hadn't noticed before, we must speak the vows that will bind our spirits together. The chamber's magic requires it, the weapons, the authority, the power to defeat Blackwood, all of it depends on our commitment to each other and to justice. Jake approached the altar, understanding that this moment would define the rest of his life. The Apache wedding ceremony Ayana described was simple but profound, speaking of unity, protection, and shared purpose. As they spoke the ancient words, Jake felt something fundamental shift inside him. The guilt and loneliness that had driven him for years began to transform into something else: strength, purpose, love. You're going to be my husband, Ayana repeated. But this time it wasn't a declaration of destiny but a statement of choice, of commitment freely given. Jake took her hands, feeling complete for the first time in his adult life. And you're going to be my wife, he replied, sealing their bond with a kiss that seemed to light up the entire chamber. The weapons around them hummed with energy, the ancient magic of the place recognizing and blessing their union. When they emerged from the chamber, they were no longer the same people who had entered it. Jake Morrison, federal marshal, and Ayana Morrison, guardian of the sacred lands, climbed back through the tunnel system to face Thomas Blackwood with the power of law, love, and ancient wisdom on their side. The confrontation that followed would become legend in the Arizona territory. Blackwood's hired guns, facing a federal marshal with unlimited ammunition and supernatural accuracy, found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered. But it wasn't just Jake's newfound abilities that turned the tide, it was the way he and Ayana fought together, anticipating each other's movements, covering each other's weaknesses, functioning as a single entity with two bodies. In the end, Thomas Blackwood was arrested, his criminal empire exposed, his illegal mining operations shut down. The Apache lands were protected, the territorial corruption was cleaned up, and justice was finally served for Sarah Martinez and all of Blackwood's other victims. Jake and Ayana Morrison settled in the Superstition Mountains, where Jake served as federal marshal for the territory and Ayana became a bridge between her people and the changing world around them. Their cabin became a place where justice was dispensed, disputes were resolved, and two cultures learned to coexist with mutual respect. Years later, when travelers would ask about the legendary marshal and his Apache wife, old-timers would tell them about the day destiny came calling in the form of a young woman who appeared in a bounty hunter's cabin and changed the course of the American West with 5 simple words. You're going to be my husband. The sacred chamber remained hidden, its secrets safe with the Morrison family and their descendants, waiting for the next time the land itself would need protecting from those who saw it only as something to be owned and exploited rather than honored and preserved. And in the evenings, when the Arizona sun painted the mountains red and gold, Jake and Ayana would sit outside their cabin, watching the desert bloom with life, knowing that some destinies were worth accepting, some prophecies were worth fulfilling, and some loves were powerful enough to change the world. 20 years passed like whispered prayers on desert winds. Jake's hair had turned completely silver, and lines mapped the adventures across his weathered face. But his eyes still held the same intensity that had first captured Ayana's attention. She remained as beautiful as the day she declared herself his wife, her wisdom deepened by decades of bridging two worlds that had learned to respect each other through her patient guidance. Their children grew up bilingual and bicultural, equally comfortable tracking Apache hunting trails and studying federal law books. The eldest, Sarah Martinez Morrison, named for the woman whose sacrifice had brought their parents together, became the territory's first female Apache attorney, carrying forward the legacy of justice that defined the Morrison family name. The cabin had expanded over the years, growing into a compound that served as courthouse, trading post, and neutral ground where disputes between settlers and native tribes were resolved through wisdom rather than warfare. Jake's federal marshal badge had been passed down through a carefully selected line of successors, each one trained in the Morrison tradition of serving justice with both strength and compassion. One autumn evening, as golden leaves danced on cooling breezes and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Jake found Ayanna standing at the edge of their property, gazing toward the sacred mountains where their destiny had first revealed itself. Her hand rested on a letter that had arrived that morning, bearing news from Washington that would change their lives once again. "The president wants to make you territorial governor," Ayanna said softly, not turning as Jake approached. "He says your work here has become a model for peaceful coexistence throughout the West. They want to expand the Morrison method to other territories." Jake took the letter, reading the official seal and formal language that described opportunities and responsibilities he'd never imagined for himself. But as he watched his wife's reflection in the cabin window, seeing the mixture of pride and uncertainty in her expression, he realized that some choices were easier to make than others. "What does your heart tell you?" he asked, using the phrase that had become their way of making important decisions together. Ayanna smiled, the expression that had first melted his defenses all those years ago when she'd stood in his doorway and changed his world forever. "My heart tells me that Sarah's vision didn't end with Blackwood's defeat," she replied. "It extended far beyond our personal happiness, beyond even our children's futures. The harmony we've built here, the peace we've maintained, the justice we've dispensed, it was all preparation for something larger." Jake nodded, understanding without need for further explanation. Their love story had never been just about two people finding each other. From the moment Ayanna had appeared in his cabin, their relationship had been a force for transformation, a catalyst for change that rippled outward in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. "Governor Morrison has a nice ring to it," Jake said, wrapping his arms around his wife as they watched their grandchildren play in the distance, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze like music from another world. "But I think I prefer Marshal Morrison and Medicine Woman Morrison, partners in justice, builders of bridges, guardians of the sacred balance." As the years continued to flow like water through Canyon Stone, the Morrison name became synonymous with fairness, wisdom, and the revolutionary idea that different cultures could not only coexist but strengthen each other through mutual respect and understanding. Their story was told around campfires and dinner tables, in schoolrooms and courthouses, wherever people gathered to speak of love that transcended boundaries and justice that served all people equally. The sacred chamber remained their secret, its ancient weapons and wisdom waiting for the next generation of Morrisons who would undoubtedly face challenges their parents could never imagine. But the real treasure had never been the mysterious artifacts or supernatural abilities the chamber had granted. The true magic had always been the love between a bounty hunter seeking redemption and an Apache woman following her destiny, a love powerful enough to heal old wounds and build new worlds. And when visitors to the Arizona Territory would ask about the legendary couple who had changed the face of the American West, old-timers would smile and point toward the Superstition Mountains, where smoke still rose from the Morrison cabin and justice still prevailed, and they would say, "That's where it all began, with 5 words that changed everything. You're going to be my husband." In the end, Jake Morrison learned that destiny wasn't something that happened to you, it was something you chose to become. And Ayanna Morrison proved that prophecies weren't predictions of an unchangeable future, but invitations to create a better world through love, courage, and unwavering commitment to what was right. Their legacy lived on in every peaceful resolution, every cultural bridge built, every moment when understanding triumphed over fear, proving that some love stories are too powerful to be contained within a single lifetime, too important to end with just 2 hearts, too transformative to be forgotten by history. The desert wind still carries their story across the mesas and canyons, whispering to young lovers and old dreamers alike that destiny and choice are not opposing forces, but partners in the eternal dance of creating meaning from chaos, hope from despair, and love from the most unlikely circumstances imaginable.